Yeah, I mean, what is the emergent property? I mean, what is it? Can I ask what it's made of? Can I ask how it exists? What is it metaphysically? I mean, if reality is just physical, and where does where does the emergent property exist? What is it? Do these questions make any sense?
Yeah, they do, and it's not an easy question to answer because obviously, to me, consciousness seems to be, coming from the interaction of the billions of neurons that we have in our brain, and nobody exactly how it emerges. Nobody knows. There's a lot of speculation. Some of it even involving quantum mechanical properties of the certain sub portions of the brain. But of course, the people that work in artificial intelligence for a long time, there's a lot of debate on this, but many of them thought that if you just write the right code and you have enough computing power, then you should be able to create, which is different than simply artificial intelligence. I mean, you can have intelligence in computers. You can beat grandmasters at chess games and things like that. It's a form of intelligence, but of course, it has nothing to do with consciousness. It doesn't mean the computer is conscious. So, how to achieve consciousness? Nobody knows right now. Some people thought, well, we have parallel computers, and now there's even quantum computers now potentially in a not too distant future. I mean, there are already some quantum computers, but they're pretty limited right now. And then the neural networks, all kinds of different ideas to try to make it work more like the brain appears to be working, or how the brain appears to be working. And nobody's figured it out yet, and I don't think we're very close at all to even figuring it out. Nobody, and even if you can figure out like some kind of basic consciousness, nobody has a clue how you would, let's say, code a computer to be able to taste chocolate, or to actually have emotions like love or fear or something like that. Nobody even has a beginning of the start of an inkling on how to do that.
I think that's that experience is the part that I would sort of attribute to something beyond. Something beyond, I guess, is just our experience of the world is something I don't see how we could ever possibly reproduce. I just don't see that, but that could just be my limited.
Yeah, it's
imaginable.
I think it's possible, but it's not just writing more powerful code and more powerful computers. There's a lot more to it than that. The classic thing is that like in Star Trek, you have data, or you have these artificial intelligence, and I think with the right architecture, it might be possible. I don't think you could create an artificial intelligence without it having a sense of having to survive somehow. I don't know. I'm guessing here, but I think it would have to be a system that needs to interact with the world in a way that it can sustain itself. But that's just pure speculation. That's not my area of expertise. I've read a bit and I've listened to a bunch of videos, but honestly, people thought that it would be pretty close to, creating artificial consciousness, and I don't think we're anywhere close. In fact, most people now in the cognitive sciences and artificial intelligence, I think would agree with that it's nowhere close.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, from what I hear, like one of the big breakthroughs is, you get this from Vervaeke's lectures, is that moving beyond this sort of, we just need to get the right code, is this interaction between the machine and the environment, and this mutual feedback loop is what's essential to moving artificial intelligence forward is
I would
just
agree.
recognize how embodied it is, and how this mutual interaction between the quote, organism and the environment is essential.
Yes, I agree with
Okay.
that.
So how brings us a bit off track, but maybe we'll come back. But how do you sort of think about technology and the future? Are you optimistic, or or pessimistic, or do you have sort of, you see dystopia or utopia?
I don't know. Say again, complex systems are of such a nature. It's completely unpredictable. So I mean, obviously, I am a little concerned. I say I'm not concerned in the near term. I'll probably be gone before this happens. But for generation, the possibility of the supposed singularity where computers become more intelligent than humans and sort of take over the world. I also think that's a lot farther out than people think. I don't see it happening anytime soon.
Well, what about something like?
But it could happen someday. It's possible. I don't know. That's
I guess what? Yeah. what sort of creeps me out more?
Yeah, well, it is. Some people, some smart people like Elon Musk and a bunch of others are worried about it. And it wouldn't be such a big deal, except that now everything is interconnected, through the internet. So if a computer somewhere, becomes malevolent or something, it could easily figure out how to control a bunch of stuff in our lives, like, power plants. And I don't know how much interconnection, there is some interconnection, but, how easy it would be to manipulate all that stuff to do some harm to humanity. I could see it. It could probably happen. Yeah. It's possible. Why a artificial intelligence would want to do that, what motivation would be, and apparently, of course, there is a lot of concern about this. So some people, their entire job is trying to figure out what safety protocols you would have to put in there. The classic science fiction novel on that, of course, is I, Robot by Isaac Asimov. But some people have debated that his rules were not really adequate to make sure that artificial intelligence doesn't harm humans. So
it's interesting. It's interesting there to think about the role of imagination here, where you sort of can either bring the future into being or sort of predict the future and prepare yourself. So, something like science fiction or dystopian or utopian novels are important because they sort of show people what could be coming, or what direction we could be headed down, or what some potential futures are, and help prepare us for that. It's an interesting faculty we have, the imagination, and I wonder how you think about something like the imagination with regards to reason.
Oh, imagination is crucial for novelty. So you can't with reason you cannot deduce novelty from past events through a reason. That's you can do it in math. You can deduce theorems and stuff like that you had not seen before. But they were all contained in your premises, your axioms. In the real world, that's not the way it works. The imagination is precisely this thing that will spark new ideas. But you have to remember, though, or be conscious that most of your ideas are going to be bad ideas. So without reason, you're doomed. Because, evolution is the same thing. In evolution, most mutations are going to be deadly. And then once in a while, there's one that actually improves. But most new ideas are bad ideas. And so you use reason as a filter, your ideas through the filter of reason, and figure out which ones actually might make sense. All right. nature, bad ideas basically are sorted out by death. The mutations that don't make it, the organism just dies and does not propagate its genes to the next generation. And that weeds out all those mutations that are beneficial compared to those. And most changes, but it's the same thing. So with human ideas, the great thing is we don't have to die. We can let our ideas die in our stead, right? So that's a major, major advantage. For a reason, we can sort of think through the consequences of our ideas that we might have gotten through our imagination. And we can sort of, deduce what the consequences would be or could be. It's not perfect, we have limited rationality. So actually the best is not to do it on your own, but to do it in a group. Typically rationality increases a lot because we're just, as humans, are terrible at criticizing themselves. So it's better to have a group where others will tell you, your idea there, I don't think it's that great, because I know they can explain it to you. They can explain their reasoning, their reasons to you why they don't think it's great. And that's a really good check. And that's why as a group, we'll perform a lot better. And you could think of that as an emergent property of the group, is the rationality of the group as a whole is much higher than the sum total of each individual rationality. So that's why human culture is so important, because the culture is the embodiment of the sum total of the knowledge that a society has learned the hard way over generations and generations. And so that's why it's very critical. You can't survive without culture.
And even if you think of something like the scientific culture, where you have a community of people who embody certain practices, certain ways of seeing, they critique each other, and
yes,
they have certain procedures and rituals, you could even say, that they follow. And in that sense, if you want to be provocative, you could say the scientific community is sort of like a religious community, because they sort of hold each other accountable and participate in these rituals which give them a way of seeing the world. But maybe that's maybe being provocative, but you sort of see my point where...
Yeah, well, you can always say, definitely. But the rituals, though, are, they're based on reason. I mean, they're not like arbitrary, right? So there is a reason to do things the way they do. There's the kind of tests are admitted, peer review and all these things. Of course, you can think of it as, they've evolved along the centuries to be more and more refined. Even that.
Well, it has to be, right? I mean,
sure.
A part of, so I think what we've established here is that reason is communal and embodied in that sense, where part of what scientific reasoning is doing is reasoning within a community, and then reasoning by doing certain practices. And I think this whole process is in constant motion, because it's this agent arena relationship, right? It's this interaction with the environment, new revelations feeds back into the system. So it gives you a much more dynamic, organic picture of rationality and knowledge than this sort of Cartesian sort of subjective, inside your own head on paper type of thing, if you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, right. But now there is a part, there are some rational arguments that stand on their own, and that has to do with the self-referential nature of humanity. So, for example, it's not possible. This is a truth about the world. It is not possible to argue against reason. because to argue against reason, you have to use reason. So you would be involved in a performative, what's called a performative contradiction, that you'd be trying to use reason to disprove reason, which you just can't do.
Well, you could start picking away at the language.
Yeah, but that's, well, you can do all kinds of stuff. You can say you deny a reason and you don't want to listen to reason. You can even attack people violently. Not be a reason, but you cannot reason argue against reason. That's a contradiction.
Well, I guess it just gets tricky because you have to define something like reason before you can make that statement. Yeah.
If you say there is no reason, is no such thing as reason, it's bad, it doesn't serve any purpose, we shouldn't listen to it.
Okay, yeah.
And that I don't, or do you consider that a reason for not believing in reason, or are you just trying to blow smoke and just, basically bullshit me into thinking something? But if you can't have reasons for arguing against reason. I mean, that makes sense, right? Because you'd be contradicting yourself. You're saying, I have this tool that's worthless, but I'm going to use it to prove it that it's worthless.
Oh,
I'm going to use a tool. I'm going to use this tool to prove that this tool I'm using is completely worthless.
Well, maybe that's something like
that it's worthless. So that can't be done. It's the same thing as, and it sounds trivial, but it's not. You cannot deny that humans must act. We must act, and therefore we must choose. The mere fact that you deny something is itself an action. So you can't deny that people are forced to act. And among the actions that we have to do are, as soon as you act, you have to make choices. Just completely undeniable. That's a truth about the real world, and you cannot deny it. It's a fact. Because again, if you deny it, you contradicted yourself because you just acted by denying it.
What do you say to Luther, who says reason is a whore?
Yeah,
well, there's something to that, isn't there?
Well, I mean, and David Hume, of course, more famously, said sort of the same thing, but in a more, polite way, I suppose. Like reason is and ought to be the slave of the passions. That's what David Hume said.
Yeah, that's how it gets used today.
So that's of course I completely disagree. That's false. But he's quoting it's the guillotine and all that, which is not true. It's just he was just wrong. I mean, philosophers, even great philosophers, he was a great philosopher, but great philosophers have said all kinds of wrong things in the past.
But well, I guess you're sort of taking a view on reason because I mean, Paul Vanderklee, for example, has said that he thinks reason is a coherence machine rather than a sort of correspondence thing, and I think, yeah, it's more about sort of maintaining a system.
Yeah, yes, but that's true. But that's how you can figure out that some of your ideas are bad ideas, because using reason, you can figure out they're not coherent. So reason basically is the art of that. The logic is identifying, pursue your idea to a certain point, and you actually able to prove both A and not A. That means there is a contradiction, and that original idea was wrong.
Yeah.
So that's the whole thing. Now, if in your head you can live with both A and not A, like something like this shirt is red, but it's also blue at the same time. Well, then I can't help you because pretty much you're insane. So the discussion has to stop at that point, right? I mean, that's what an irrational being. There are people that are like that. They're we call them irrational for a reason. They are not able to see contradictions like this and take action based on that. So, you know, typically they'll end up in a mental asylum or something. But that, you know, it's sad. I mean, I wish nobody was like that. And thankfully, those cases over here are rare. Most people want to be irrational, although I would agree with Jonathan Haidt that, you know, in practice, most people are pretty irrational. You know, they follow. And I don't know, you're familiar with Jonathan Haidt's work on the metaphor of the elephant, you know, the emotional elephant and the rider, the rational rider, and the elephant is stronger. So the rider is pretty much there along for the ride, and then comes up after the fact with post hoc, you know, rationalizing of what the elephant did. Either. I agree to the extent that in practice, most people do act that way. That's true. But I think you can escape that. It's hard. It's not easy. But I think you can escape that mode of thinking.
He would probably agree, but maybe you think it's a bit easier than he does.
Yeah, when you think about it, one of the things you can be passionate about is reason. So there you go. So yeah, I think you need both. You know, you need for sure. You need imagination. You know, again in popular culture, I guess the sort of like the archetype of this tension between reason and imagination or the passions is Star Trek. You know, Mr. Spock being the, you know, supposedly completely irrational. Now we know he's not, because he's half human, and even a pure Vulcan still has emotion. They just said they were so suppressed, right? So they try to completely irrational. And then on the other hand, you have like Dr. McCoy, who's like the very emotional, you know, not irrational, but, you know, tends to let his passions drive him more than reasoning. And then in the middle, you've got Captain Kirk, who's kind of like the Aristotelian virtuous middle, who kind of balances both sides, right? Which, as humans, that's what we should try to do. We shouldn't be overly emotional, and we can't be completely irrational either.
Somehow, there's this paradox.
Can I put on pause? I need to get the cat out. He's meowing out there.
Okay, sure.